Welcome to Fight Club. The second rule of Fight Club is to watch this fighter class guide so you know everything you need to know about playing Lae'zel or a custom fighter. And the first rule about Fight Club...
Whoa, hold on. What the hell happened to you? I get it. The first rule of Fight Club, right?
Let me know how you're building out your fighter in the comments down below and what class you'd like me to do next. These class guides are designed to teach you the mechanics of a class and everything you need to know to succeed. I'll have a link to the playlist here for you guys. So the fighter is one of the most consistent martial focused classes in the game in both ranged and melee options. Preferably for the most part, fighters will be a melee class wielding some sort of martial or simple weapons and dealing damage in melee range, though you do also have ranged weapon proficiencies, so you have a lot of flexibility in terms of how you want to deal with combat in that way. They also make a great tank class because of their armor proficiencies, their shield proficiencies, the high hit points, as well as second wind, which is a class mechanic that on their turn as a bonus action, they can regain some of their hit points as well. So lots of solid options as a fighter, but for the most part, you'll just be using your standard attacks plus the standard attacks of the various weapons that you may have equipped. So I guess one of the first tips for the fighter is that you won't necessarily be using spells unless you go a certain subclass, but the actual effects of the weapon in terms of the different attacks that they give you are much more important for a class like this because they can often be really critical to help you deal damage or AoE damage with cleave or something like that. So just worth pointing out to pay attention to those like specific weapon attacks that you get for the weapons that you do use. So let's cover the races real quick. Now obviously you can pick whatever you like for role playing. Racial movement speed is important for a melee focused fighter, so something like any of the taller races here, and you could consider dark vision if you do want to play as a ranged focused fighter, so make sure you class as dark vision. But overall, probably the best option, a bit like the barbarian, is probably the half orc because of relentless endurance, so you can survive attacks if you are down, as well as savage attacks, which makes it so that your dice roll will be triple rather than double, which is absolutely huge. Next, you'll actually pick a fighting style, and this is dependent on what you actually want to do as a fighter. So you've got archery, defense, dueling, great weapon fighting, and protection here to sort of choose from, as well as two weapon fighting. Now this is dependent on the type of weapon that you want to use. If you're not sure at character creation, just pick whichever one sounds most interesting to you, and then you can actually respec your class and change this option later. Say for example, if you end up like leaning towards, let's say, two weapon fighting and dual wielding compared to you may have actually chosen great weapon fighting instead, you can actually make that change there. Skills aren't really the strength of a fighter, so there isn't anything that's like critical to pick here. You'll obviously grab athletics as it's the only strength kill, but then you can maybe get something like acrobatics, perception, survival maybe, and in terms of the background, again, you can sort of pick whatever you like here. Maybe soldier or noble probably would be the most consistent, but that's entirely up to you. For your ability points, when you're choosing your list here, getting your strength to 17 is the most important thing, and then dexterity and constitution both on 14. Dexterity for that initiative and armor class, and constitution for those hit points is definitely critical to have. Make sure your charisma is on at least 10 as well if your fighter is going to be a talker. Like it does initially start at 8, so just make sure you bump that up. It's also worth noting here, if you're going to go the Eldritch Knight subclass, that you will need intelligence as your spellcasting modifier. So speaking of those subclasses, you've got 3 to pick from at level 3. The first being Battle Master, which will give you access to the superiority die, which will allow you to make certain combat attacks, both melee and range, depending on your choice here in the options that you do choose. There's some really great options here for a martial focused class, like being able to push enemies, have them drop their weapon. It sort of gives you, it's not like a spell, right? Because it is a martial attack, but it gives you more flexibility in combat as a fighter if you don't want to go the spell route, and allowing you to have these different effects on top of your attacks. The Eldritch Knight will enhance your fighter with the study of magic, so you'll essentially gain spells here to pick from. As mentioned, you will need intelligence for this, as intelligence is the spellcasting modifier. So if you haven't specced into that, make sure you do if you do go this route. And the champion is a little bit more different. Like they hard lean into just like the normal attacks that you get with your weapons, like melee and range. A little bit more simple, I would say, than say the Battle Master or the Eldritch Knight, definitely than the Eldritch Knight. If you're looking to what option to pick here, personally, I would say to go the Battle Master, because you can stick to that sort of melee and range focus and the flexibility of the combat kit, but you also get access to those superiority dice and the uniqueness of those different attacks, being able to push enemies, disarm them, or do different effects, add advantage, frighten, all sorts of things, and that gives you more flexibility in combat, whereas the champion doesn't get that access, but you still sort of focus focus on the melee or the ranged options, whereas the Eldritch Knight changes the class and the playstyle much more significantly than the others. When you're leveling up as a fighter, you will get access to additional feats as a fighter. So first you'll pick one at level 4. Now here, for the most part, you probably want to go into the ability improvement to get your strength to 18, potentially get your dex or con higher if you're just trying to level out your stats properly. Getting your strength modifier to 18 for that extra number is very important. For the extra feat here, depending on what weapon you're using, Polearm Master is probably a great option. Now, there is heaps of really good glaives and halberds in the game. For some reason, I don't know why they get so many good weapons, but there's heaps of them. And the Polearm Master is a fantastic feat that allows you to get an opportunity attack if someone just enters your melee range, but it also gives you the ability to make an extra attack as a bonus action when you are just attacking throughout your turn. Now, if you're not using, say, like a polearm, you can basically get these same benefits from great weapon fighting, though it also comes with all in, which we've talked about in the barbarian video. So either of those are really good options, say if you're two-handing some sort of a weapon or using a polearm, though the polearm's like weapon class is really good for the extra reach as well, because they're much larger weapons. It's a great option. For your next feat, I would probably go something like maybe Savage Attacker, because you can then re-roll your damage dice to make sure it does more damage. Or you could even go something like the Martial Adept, which will give you an additional superiority dice, but it'll also allow you to pick more of those different options that say you maybe didn't pick as you're leveling up, and sort of choosing the different actions that you can pick from. So there's plenty of options there, but definitely pick up Savage Attacker if you've got the extra space, the ability improvement, and then whatever your weapon class that you were using, choose that feat. Some general tips for the fighter: if you're picking Lae'zel, you may want to respec her just to make sure that her stats are right for like a min-max perspective, like her ability points, but that's entirely up to you. There isn't a huge amount to say about the fighter. Like, they are a very consistent damage focused class. You get that extra attack at level 5, so you'll definitely be attacking twice per turn, plus potentially 3 times if you're thinking about using something like Polearm Master or the Great Weapon Fighter. But for the most part, there isn't heaps that you need to worry about. Like, you definitely want to equip a bow so you can do some of that range damage, especially in the Battle Master line, because all of the maneuverability attacks that you get to use those superiority dice, they come with both a melee and a ranged option, because you get that freedom to choose between the two, right? So say if you can't get into close range because you just don't have enough movement speed, you've got that ranged option for those encounters when you do have that. Make sure as well that you go into the menus and enable the ask option for all of the reactions, because you will have a lot of reactions as a fighter, especially if you're going like polearm or even sentinel, you'll get heaps of reactions. But just make sure you're enabling that option, because you don't want to like accidentally waste your reaction on something that maybe you didn't want to. But it's also good just to know when those reactions go off. Like, I always enable it on all my characters. I feel like it's just, for me personally, I like to know when those reactions are happening rather than just them triggering on their own, because in some cases, the further you get down the line and you have different reactions that you can trigger, you may want to skip reacting to something because you want to keep that reaction for something else to occur, if that makes sense. So just pay attention to those reactions, as you only get one of those like per combat turns, just the same as you do with the other attacks. But let me know what you think about the fighter in the comments down below. Thank you guys for watching this video till the end. Thank you to our members for supporting the channel. My name is NorZZa, and I hope you have a great day.